It seems that modern life is full of acronyms. LOL, BTW, JK. Obviously, some are more important or useful than others. And in professional settings, you will hear quite a few related to business and management, and one of those is the PMP. It stands for Project Management Professional, and it's a certification. Now, if you specifically chose to watch this video, you probably already know what certifications are. But in the off chance you don't, let me explain it this way. In your career, you want to be good at what you do. Hopefully, you want to be the best. However, just being good at what you do is not enough. You also want others to know your value, because that should, in theory, bring you pay raises, promotions, more customers, fame, fortune, lucrative deals for the film rights to your life story, and maybe even a Nobel Prize, though not necessarily in that order. I'm not saying that a certification will guarantee that you get all of that, or even any of it, but I am saying that certifications can certainly lay down a solid foundation for that. A certification is something that vouches for you. When you're certified, somebody with the appropriate level of expertise and authority is certifying that through education and experience you actually know what in the world you're talking about and what you're doing. This is incredibly important when you are introducing yourself, such as through a job application or a website. Your target audience is somebody you've never met, and with that certification, they can make some automatic assumptions about you, usually favorable, and unless you fake the certification, you're off to a great start and the rest is up to you to deliver on those expectations. Of course, the certification is just a helpful indicator, a starting point. To paraphrase your stockbroker, certifications are no guarantee of future performance. Now, I've met many people with certifications that are not particularly great at what they do, and plenty of people with no certifications that are absolutely fantastic at what they do. But certifications are still very helpful as they're generally applicable most of the time. This PMP certification is for project management, which requires a pretty diverse set of skills. But you may be thinking, but I'm not a project manager, so why would I need a PMP certification? Well, it just so turns out that the set of skills necessary to be an effective project manager are the same set of skills to be an effective product manager or program manager, and are almost as applicable in a bunch of other roles, including, but not limited to, being an analyst or consultant, being a people manager, starting and running your own business, or even being a parent. And yes, I put that last one in to kind of be funny, but it happens to be true as well. Do you absolutely need a PMP certificate? No. I worked for 8 years as a successful senior technical product manager before I got my PMP certificate. Does it help? Clearly, I think it does offer some advantages. What's more, just studying for the PMP has value as well, even if you never bothered testing for the certificate, or in the worst case scenario, you failed the test. And that's because the stuff covered in that training is the good nuts and bolts kind of knowledge that will serve you well in almost any role or stage of your career, almost any career, and even some bits of your personal life. So who came up with the certification in the first place? And that would be PMI, the Project Management Institute, which is a nonprofit organization based in Pennsylvania. The origins of the organization reach back to the birth of the role itself, which became an actual thing during the 1960s, where project management was being developed and used in the defense, construction, and aerospace industries. After all, nobody was going to land on the moon, much less return to the Earth, without some incredibly complex projects implemented with clockwork precision and accuracy. And that was going to require a whole lot of careful and thoughtful project management. PMI was founded in 1969, and their purpose was to evangelize the need for professionalism and standards in project management, and to serve as the hub for fostering ideas, techniques, standards, networking, and research between project management professionals. In the 1980s, PMI emphasized their efforts around standardization, and in 1984 they launched the PMP certification, which has since become the de facto standard in project management and is accepted around the world. Perhaps it's not as widely accepted as Visa or American Express, but on the other hand, it can help you earn money instead of spending it. In fact, in 2007, the PMP earned the ANSI and ISO accreditation from the ISO, which is the International Organization for Standardization. Yes, I know that the acronym for the International Organization for Standardization should be iOS, and that would be problematic all by itself in this age of smartphones, But since the organization is truly international and the acronym would be wildly different for each language and country, it was decided not to go with an acronym at all. ISO was specifically chosen to represent the organization across the globe, and if you want to know all the nitty-gritty details, you should look them up on the web. But I digress. In 1996, PMI produced the first edition of the PMBOK, which kinda sounds like the name of a Vulcan character on Star Trek, but it isn't. It is, however, incredibly fun to say and a lot more convenient than saying Project Management Body of Knowledge. The PMBOK contains standard terminology and guidelines for project management, and basically this is the most, if not all, the material you'll be tested against for your certificate. Of course, we live in an ever-changing world, and the best ideas and trends around project management have changed and adapted over the years. So did the PMBOK. Every few years, a new edition is released to reflect the current cutting edge in project management principles and best practices, and the current edition, which is the edition this series is tuned to, is the 7th edition, and you can purchase a copy online from Amazon. So we've talked about the certification, how it can be useful, and who's behind the certification. By now, I hope I may have sparked your interest. Of course, you may feel compelled to run out of the room screaming instead. I hope not, but that is a valid reaction, and if I'm being completely honest here, it was pretty close to my first reaction, but I got over it. However, if you do the running and the screaming, take a few minutes to breathe into a paper bag, and once you calm down, come back here and finish the video. If you've been around a bit, you will know that certifications come in all flavors and all sizes, and not all of them carry the same weight or influence. Some are little more than pieces of paper that you paid for, and others are real accomplishments that are highly sought after. The PMP certification is one of the latter, and at least part of the reason why is that they won't let just anyone off the street to take the exam, even if that person's willing to put down a lot of cash to take it. Besides paying the exam fee, there are 2 requirements that must be met before you can qualify to take the exam. There's an educational requirement and there's a job experience requirement. Now, I know, some of you might be feeling the need to go run and scream again, but I assure you that this is not as big a deal as you might think it is. However, there is a little nuance here, so let me get right to it. First off, PMI's educational requirements are basically measured in hours of formal or semi-formal training. However, that can be a mouthful to say, so they refer to them as professional development units or PDUs to help keep things moving along. So, getting back to the requirements for the exam. If you completed your 4-year college degree and survived the experience, then the requirement is for 35 PDUs of project management education and 36 months of professional experience leading projects within the past 8 years. If you haven't completed your 4-year college degree, then you still have the same education requirement for 35 PDUs of project management education, but the professional experience leading projects jumps up to 60 months. I'll talk a little more about what does and does not qualify in terms of those requirements in a minute, but I also wanted to point out that the educational requirement can be entirely replaced by earning the Certified Associate in Program Management Certificate, or CAPM. Now, I won't be covering anything else about that certificate in this series, but you can think of it as a junior PMP, and if you already have it, it will make your PMP certification easier. And if you don't have it, you might consider it as a pretty good stepping stone to the PMP. When it comes to PDUs, what kind of education are we talking about? Well, PMI is actually quite accommodating in this. On their website, they list a number of options, and you can mix and match between them, including in-person and online courses from PMI itself, their authorized training partners, and even other third-party providers. Another option is a live, virtual, or on-demand seminar, and PMI keeps an active events calendar on their website where you can find some of these listed. You can also attend a bunch of meetings with your local PMI chapter, or you can complete self-paced learning online or through various forms of digital media. And by their definition, this video series counts. You can also read books about project management, and you can even earn credits by engaging in structured professional discussions with others. Talking to your cats doesn't count, nor does boring your spouse with PMP discussions over dinner. But semi-formal question and answer sessions or roundtable discussions with other management professionals probably would. Of course, whichever option or options you choose, you will need to have it documented, because when you do go to apply for the exam, you will need to explain how you meet the educational requirements. Then there's the professional experience requirement. You don't need to have experience as an official, dyed-in-the-wool, authorized and approved project manager, but you do need to show experience of work that is similar to what a project manager does, and it needs to be professional experience. Planning your own wedding or large family vacation doesn't count. I can certainly understand how you might think it does, but it doesn't. However, helping to organize and operationalize a new company does. Likewise, planning, preparing, and managing a large corporate move would count. There are a lot of things that most of us do at work that would probably count, and don't forget that you'll need months and months of this kind of experience to meet the requirement. Once you are sure you meet the educational and professional requirements, you can apply to take the exam through the PMI website. You won't need to pay for anything at this stage of the process, but you will need to go into some detail as to how you meet the requirements I previously described. It's important that you're as clear, complete, and honest as possible, as this information will be carefully reviewed. If approved, you will receive a notification that you're now authorized to take the exam and that you have a year to schedule and take it. You register for the exam at the PMI website, and from there you can find dates and locations where the exam is given. Pick one that's convenient for you. If you're still not confident, you don't need to schedule right away. After all, you have a year to take the exam, so you can use that time to keep studying until you feel comfortable enough to take the plunge. If you schedule the exam but need to reschedule or cancel, you can do that up to a certain point, but it'll cost some money. So do yourself a favor and don't schedule anything until you really think you're ready to take the exam. A final note for qualifying to take the exam. It is entirely possible that after you apply but before you are authorized to take the exam, you may be audited. This has nothing to do with the government or taxes, but everything to do with maintaining quality control and standards. Now, if you're notified that you're being audited, PMI is specifically interested in validating or proving your educational professional qualifications are what you say they are. And they're going to want to see transcripts and completion certificates where applicable, and they will want to reach out to former supervisors and companies to verify your work. And if you are open and honest up front, then aside from a little administrative hassle, this shouldn't be a problem for you. However, if you substantially falsified your eligibility, you may be disqualified from taking the examination, as PMI has a strict code of ethics and professional conduct that goes with the certification, and falsifying your eligibility violates that code in almost every way. The code is an important point to remember, as this applies to and through the entire certification process and even after you receive your certification. Unless you're an android or have some phenomenal super genius intelligence and recall, meeting the educational requirements to take the exam will not guarantee that you pass the exam. In fact, about 40% of those who take the exam for the first time fail. You'll need to study. Most of the sources I've seen recommend taking about 6 months to study up for the exam. Of course, that's very generalized advice. We're all different, and each of us has our own speed and style of study, not to mention different levels of previous knowledge and past experience. So only you can really know how much effort and what kind of effort you will need to take, and you probably don't even know that for sure until you actually jump into the pool and thrash around a bit. There are a number of products and services out there designed to help you with this stage of the process. Some of them are great, most are okay, and a few are borderline scams, and almost all of them cost money. Take your time in evaluating the resources and deciding what to do. Personal recommendations are one of my favorite ways to vet services I'm considering, so ask around in your personal professional networks. Also, you don't necessarily need to spend more money. I went with the tried and true method of making my own flashcards based on the paid online training I took and the handouts they gave me, as well as any other reputable sources I came across. Regardless of what you choose, you need to stick with the studying until you feel you're ready. Now, when exactly is that? Well, that's the magic question. When I was doing my online training, they said that if I passed their quizzes and practice tests with a score of 70% or more, I was ready. And I did. So I thought I was ready. However, I went out and I started taking every free practice test and quiz I could find on the web, and I was shocked. On some, I was scoring in the high 80s, and on others, I scored as low as 50%. And the other results were pretty much spread evenly everywhere in between. Obviously, if you score high in all of them, you are ready. But if you see mixed results like I did, you shouldn't let this discourage you. Just remember that unless you took the practice test from PMI itself, the questions you answered were from somebody that may have decided to emphasize certain aspects of the PMBOK over others. Or, and this is completely unsubstantiated on my part, Many of these practice tests are provided by individuals or companies that have a service or product that you pay for to study for the exam, and it would be somewhat in their best interest to make sure their practice exams seem tougher or your knowledge seems lesser so that you might feel compelled to buy their product or service. Now, I have zero proof of that, but I hope you can see how that might work out. So keep your wits about you and think critically when you're evaluating your readiness. Ultimately, you are likely to do better than you expected, and even if you do fail that first time, you have gone through it once, and so you'll know exactly what to expect next time. But it's my job to try and prevent the need for a second attempt, so let's press on. Let me just say that I would feel a whole lot more comfortable if the people that run the exams were also tasked with security at the airports. These people are professional and courteous, but they are hardened and efficient experts at security, process, and rooting out cheaters. This applies to both taking the test in person and taking the tests online. But a word to the wise. When making arrangements for my own examination, I looked at both options and I chose to take the exam in person. The complications around the online option are just too numerous, and any hiccup could complicate matters and possibly jeopardize my exam. So unless you live on the opposite side of the state from where they give the exams, you really should consider taking the exam in person. That's just my personal opinion. When you take the exam, you can't take anything in with you, but they will provide you with something to write with and something to write on. A piece of advice that was given to me and which I found useful is that once you're set up at your station to take the test, immediately write down all the formulas and such that you think you'll need. Sometimes it just works better to go through the formula with a reference handy, and since you can't actually bring in a reference, you'll have to make your own from the knowledge bouncing around in your head. So reproduce it up front while you're still sharp and fresh, and then press on with the test itself. Something else to consider is that when you're taking the exam, you'll be rather isolated. Most likely in a small walled cubicle with noise-canceling headphones and with your back to the proctor, effectively closed off from the rest of the world. It's about as close as you can get to being in a sensory deprivation tank without actually being in a sensory deprivation tank. Now, since I live in the real world with kids, absolute silence is kind of weird and foreign, so that level of isolation was actually a little distracting, but I quickly got used to it and eventually came to appreciate it. In fact, there are some days where I think I would gladly pay to go back and just sit in the cubicle, not to take the test, but just to enjoy the quiet isolation. The exam itself consists of 180 questions. Most of them are multiple choice, but there's some matching and fill-in-the-blank questions as well. The questions are going to focus on 3 domains: people, processes, and the business environment. However, the breakdown's kind of skewed. Half of the questions are about process, while 42% are about people, and only 8% are about the business environment. From my personal experience, that's a pretty good breakdown. You'll most likely take the exam on a computer, so the exam is broken up into 3 parts of 60 questions each with a scheduled break of 10 minutes between parts, and the whole shebang is scheduled for about 4 hours. If nature calls, you can take an unscheduled break at any time, but the clock keeps running and you'll have to go through the security routine in and out, so plan accordingly, or better yet, try not to take any unscheduled breaks if at all possible. Again, if you use the computer to take your exam, you should be able to get provisional results before you go home. The results are just that, provisional, which is to say that it's possible that they might change. Now, in talking to others about this, the consensus is that the results are provisional because they not only check how many answers you got right, but they also look at the security footage of you taking the test and look for anomalous results in your answers that might indicate cheating or general weirdness warranting further investigation. However, all of this is routine, so you shouldn't feel singled out. It's all part of keeping the certification relevant. I haven't heard of anybody having their provisional pass result changed to a fail, but one would assume that it's a possibility. I've also never heard of somebody's failed result being changed to a pass, and I would assume that's a possibility as well, but probably infinitely improbable. Your official results will probably arrive within a couple of business days. Now, they use a system of digital certificates which let you post your certification on sites like LinkedIn and make it clear that the certification's not faked. Your new certification comes with 2 dates and a credential number. One of the dates is the date you took the exam and passed, even though the official result happened a few days later. The other date is when the credential expires. Yep, just like a gallon of milk, your certification will eventually expire. Luckily, your certificate lasts much longer than a gallon of milk. In fact, it's good for 3 years, and as long as you keep your certification current, you won't need to retake the exam. To keep your certification current and be eligible for renewal, it's all about education and those PDUs as discussed earlier. However, for renewal, the training requirement is for 60 PDUs, but you can complete those at any point during the 3 years that the certification is active. So, you can take a few here and a few there, or you can do what most people do and wait until the last minute and then take them all at once in a panicked rush. Generally, the same kind of training that works for your initial eligibility to take the exam will work for maintaining your credential, but you'll need a lot more of them. However, for the purposes of maintaining your certificate, you also have the option to earn PDUs in a completely different way by giving back to the profession. The idea behind these PDUs is that you're using your certified knowledge to give back and help others in the profession and the larger community. And this can be done through just working in a certified role, by creating training materials such as articles, blogs, webinars, videos, and also by giving presentations, related volunteer work, and just sharing the knowledge and teaching. Of the 60 PDUs required for renewal, up to 25 can come from giving back to the profession. Of course, in addition to the PDU requirement, you'll need to pay, but the cost is much lower than it was for taking the exam and receiving the original credential. And that pretty much wraps up what the PMP exam is and why it's important. If you are new to the PMP, I hope this helped remove the mystery and possibly help ease any anxiety you may have been having. And if you already knew about the PMP, I hope you might have learned a useful tidbit or two through watching the video. Professional and personal education in general, and certification specifically, are just a piece of the overall development strategy you should build, maintain, and tweak as you progress in your own career. The Raven Feather Group LLC was formed specifically to help you with strategizing and optimizing your personal and career growth, and whether you need tweaks and feedback to your current plan or you have a need to start from scratch, we can help you with one or more coaching sessions. Please visit our website to learn more or to send us any questions you may have. We're always happy to help. We are also happy to hear any feedback you might have, for better or for worse. So please leave a comment to let us know what you thought about the video, and while you're at it, please feel free to mash the like and subscribe buttons. Have an awesome day. Miigwech. Cheers.